companies including Boar's Head Provisions, Energetics, Gentex, Johnson Controls, Hayworth, Herman Miller, Hudsonville Ice Cream, Request Foods, Siemens, and a number of others. Randy has played a key role in the economic development in our area, and he's got some great insight to share with us this morning. Here's Randy Thelen.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, good morning. First, can everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, before we get into the formal remarks, this is the first Michigan West Coast Early Bird Breakfast. It is an honor to be here. I was here back in June, and how many people were here in June? How many people recall sort of that legal mechanics of going through the vote? David Slickers and Doug Kuipers up here walking us through that process. Pretty thrilling stuff, right? Well, it struck me after the end of that process, which was a big deal, and it was repeated across town at Zeeland, it was sort of anticlimactic. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of work, hundreds if not thousands of hours, put into making this merger a reality. And at a time when Michigan communities across the state are talking about collaboration, we're doing it. So I'd like to take a minute just to recognize those folks that really went above and beyond. And would the board members of the chamber please stand up, as well as the staff members. We're talking about hundreds of hours of volunteer time, staff that went above and beyond the call of duty to make this happen. So don't be shy. David, come on. Would the chamber board of directors stand up, and would the staff as well stand up? I know we're a humble lot in West Michigan, but we do need to take a few moments to celebrate success on occasion. So congrats and thank you for putting in that extra effort. So today we're here to talk about the local economy. And let's start off with one of the key stats that's really been at the forefront of our region for the past year or so. And that is from June of 2010 to June of 2011, this was the fastest growing job market in the country. How many people, by show of hands, knew that? Fastest growing job market in the country. Well, less than half. We've all been living in the most dynamic economy in the entire country, and less than half of us knew that. And it frankly wasn't even that close. We grew at 4.7% of our job base, the rest of the country at 0.9. A remarkable economic recovery in a very short period of time. And since June of 11, that type of growth has continued. We remain in the top tier of counties across the country in terms of job growth. It's hard to sometimes put the data in perspective. We all have anecdotes. We all have friends and neighbors that remain out of work, and that kind of frames our reference, or it kind of guides our judgment in terms of whether or not we think the economy is back. But as we'll show this morning, we have a lot to be excited about. The job, the housing market, almost across the board, we're seeing a robust recovery here in West Michigan. Now, this is not to suggest we don't have challenges or we don't face uncertain times. There's no doubt the European fiscal crisis that's out there and pending clouds the future. There's no doubt the health insurance changes that are taking place next year and what that means from a cost perspective for business clouds sort of the future a bit. Taxes and what happens with the election in November, all of that will impact our economy without doubt. But all of that is well outside of our control. So today, in the time that I have up here, I want to spend some time with you talking about what's more in our control. Talk to you about the economic data that's driving our community, help you make more and better informed decisions as you go about leading your business, your community, or your nonprofit. These are exciting times, and I think it's important for us to all have a better understanding of what the local dynamic truly is. So when we're done here today, I hope everybody has a deeper understanding of where we are at today, where we're going, what are we hearing from businesses in terms of their expansion plans, and finally, somebody guard the doors. We're not asking for a contribution in terms of dollars, but we have roughly 250 of the top leaders in our community, a very talented group of people here today. How can you use those talents, your leadership position, to advance our economy? How can you contribute that talent to the advancement of our community? Not many places in the country can show a jobs graph quite like this. Plenty can show the jobs graph going from 2007 down to 2008 and continuing on that bottom floor. Virtually every community can do that. Very few could show the type of robust job recovery that we see here. No, we're not all the way back. We still have more jobs to gain. We still have more room to grow. The fact is, in the last 2 years, we've grown by nearly 10,000 jobs. For a community of our size, that's nothing short of incredible. How many people knew that? 10,000 jobs in basically 2 years. Everybody shows the downturn across the country. Very few show that uptick like we do. To put it in different terms, unemployment rates. This is a stat that's shown in the newspaper about every month. I would argue not many people fully understand the unemployment rate and how it works, but it's the stat that people understand. And same thing as you would expect holds true here. In the last 2 years, that we peaked at just over 12%. Today, we're at just over 7%. We've seen our unemployment rate cut roughly in half in 2 short years. Cut in half. Again, not many places in the country can have that kind of chart. It's a rapid recovery, a rapid change. And before anybody asks, this is not a result. If you really understand the unemployment rate, you know it's the number of people unemployed divided by those that are working or those looking for work. If we don't have, it's not a matter of people leaving the workforce. It's not a matter of people leaving the workforce to drive the number down here. It is a matter of those 10,000 jobs driving our economy forward and driving the unemployment rate down. That's what's making this change. So job growth is robust. On the housing front, and I will tell you, I called Jack Bauman at Coldwell Banker the other day and asked for some housing data, expecting it to be negative, frankly. And part of that is sort of my field of vision every single day. When I drive to work, when I drive home from work, I drive by the same house that's been for sale for 2 years. Drives me crazy because in my work, it's a reminder that we've got more work to do. Until this house sells, personally, I'm going to feel that the housing market hasn't recovered. So that's sort of my negative view on the housing market, is that same single house. But when Jack supplied the data over the last year, from 2011 to 2012, year-over-year data, it has been a remarkable change of scenery here on the housing front. We've seen an additional, year-over-year, 550 more homes be sold in our community, and this is from Saugatuck to M45, from the lake to Zeeland. 550 more homes, valued at an additional $100 million of home sales. $100 million of additional home sales have transacted this year compared to last year. And the average sale price of a house has increased by 10 grand, or just short of 10 grand, $9,600. Again, how many people would have expected that? How many people knew that? How many people drive by that same house that I do, that's been for sale for 2 years, and therefore the housing market's going to be bad forever and ever and ever, when the data doesn't back that up? So that was a nice, Jack, I wasn't sure how I was going to cover this if it was negative, so that really worked well for me. But it is true. This is captured by the Lakeshore Realtor Association. We then went to the utility companies. We went to both the Holland Board of Public Works and the Zeeland Board of Public Works, and our friends at the HPPW, forgive me, but the data was easier to work with from Zeeland, but they both showed about the same thing. Remarkable uptick in electric demand. So what does this mean? In electric demand for industrial use. This is not air conditioning sales because we had a hot summer. There's probably no greater economic indicator for industrial output than electric demand. This means there are more machines working more often. More shifts, more days, Saturdays, some even Sundays. I had a company tell me recently very quietly, don't tell anybody, but we're going to start working Sundays because we have to. It's happening, folks. I mean, there are some companies that are booming, and Zeeland sold more electricity last year than they have ever sold. I'm sorry, this year, their last fiscal year, 2012. More electricity this year than they have ever sold before. Industrial output is up substantially. So when you go about the community and you're still sort of in that 2008, 2009 frame of mind, please know this core data, the core fundamentals of our economy are extremely strong, much better than we were at the downturn, and in a position that very few communities across the country can replicate. Stronger housing market, again, I'm not suggesting we're all the way back. Strong job market, we're not all the way back, but getting very close. And electric demand that is setting all-time records. That speaks, I think, to positive things going forward. So that's where we are at. What gives us reason for optimism going forward? With all of this uncertainty that continues to cloud the economy, what gives us pause, or what gives us reason for optimism? What do we see happening out there? A couple of things. The Brookings Institute, which is a widely respected think tank, came out recently with a report on regions across the country, and they took a more careful look at Michigan. And in this report, they broke down the Holland, Zeeland, Grand Haven area. Greater Ottawa County is a separate region from GR, separate from Muskegon, so we can get very fine detail. And if you look at this graph, in terms of exports as a share of output, So how much of our product do we sell around the world? We are the second strongest export county in the state. We make products that the world wants. We provide services that the world wants. Nearly 20% of our output goes overseas. I see the crew at Gentex up front. A good portion of their products is going into Europe, is going into Asian made vehicles. We have some incredible capabilities to serve the world market. That bodes well. That's a big part of why we've seen a quick and rapid recovery. We're not entirely dependent on the Midwest economy. We're not entirely dependent on the U.S. economy. We are part of the global economy here, more so than any other place but Battle Creek. That same Brookings Institute report came out and looked at innovation. How are communities doing in terms of coming up with new ideas? How many patent applications are there per capita? And once again, we come in second place, far outpacing the other regions, second only to Ann Arbor. Second only to Ann Arbor. And if you're at all like me and think of Ann Arbor as being from another planet, well then we're number one, right? It is true, right? Excuse me, I'm going to grab some water. So when it comes to the economy, having a base, our core economy, having an export base, being part of the global economy, and being an innovative place, developing patents at a pace greater than any part of Michigan, that is a reason for optimism. That is a core fundamental strength. And if you look at this, I have to make one quick semi-political comment here. There is, this morning's paper, if you've seen the Sentinel, there's an article about the former Tulip City Airport, West Michigan Regional Airport, and the election that's coming up this fall. This slide here tells us that airport is a key catalyst for our community. We cannot serve global markets from tiny Holland, Zealand if we don't have access to those global markets. So if there's any argument about the economic impact of that airport, our companies, I believe, cannot become global, cannot reach those markets without an asset like that. So hopefully that message continues to get out there. Here's some great data. At Lakeshore Advantage, every year we meet with upwards of 200 area companies. We get out to meet with the manufacturing base, the engineering shops, the design firms, those companies that sell outside of our region, and ask a multitude of questions, trying to gain their insights into the local economy. How is their business operating, and how is our community delivering what they need? That survey instrument that we use is replicated by 1,000+ economic development organizations across the country, and so we can compare and contrast our data up against theirs. No longer are we just walking in, or like most economic development shops, and asking companies, how's it going? Did you see the Tigers last night? And just trying to build those relationships. This is a detailed, comprehensive business intelligence survey that has given us a great insight into our community. And 2 data points from this I'll share with you. We started this in 2010. At that time, less than 70% of the companies were reporting increasing sales. Roughly 5.5% to 6% were reporting decreasing sales. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a nice spike in number of companies reporting positive sales growth. Over 80% of our companies today are seeing increasing sales, and virtually 0 are reporting declining sales. It's a nice positive shift. If we had done this back in 08 and 09, I'm convinced we would have seen a rapid growth in the type of sales projections our companies were telling us. But very positive. Today we don't have companies that we're meeting with that are struggling. We don't have companies that we're meeting with that are really looking into the abyss as their sales continue to fall. Today, by and large, our companies are growing, our company sales are growing, and growing quite strongly. This then carries forward, as you might expect, into growth. One of our survey questions asked point blank, does their company expect to add people? Does their company expect to add equipment? Or will they expand their facility in the next 3 years? We asked that point blank of our companies, and you can see a rapid change in attitudes as the sales have grown, as the economy locally has strengthened. Or just at 80% even, our companies are telling us in the next 3 years they will be expanding their facilities, either jobs, equipment, or building. An incredible stat. So we talked earlier about the base of our economy being very strong, the jobs recovery, the housing changes, electric demand indicating that there's output increases. And now looking forward, our companies are telling us that they expect to continue this growth. They're back, their balance sheets are stabilized, they're ready to go. So for the bankers in the room that are looking, where's the business, it's coming, it's coming. Now they might be filling existing space today, they might not be building new facilities just yet, but make no mistake, our companies have turned the corner and are looking to grow. So So our base is strong, and our future here is indicating things can be very, very positive going forward. So now it's time to get out that checkbook. How can you contribute, right? I want to look a little bit forward. What are we doing as a community from an economic development perspective? Not just at Lakeshore Advantage, because economic development is beyond our walls, beyond our staff. It takes a team approach to do economic development properly. We need everybody in this room. We need partners that couldn't be here this morning to participate and engage. So what can you do to help make a positive contribution to the advancement of our local economy? And as we go through these slides, I'll just tell you, I'm not trying to get every last opportunity up on the screen. There's plenty of opportunities to make a contribution and get engaged. But I do want to give you a sense of what are some of the things that are taking place that are worthy of your time and in your investment in some of your expertise. First is clearly education and training. When you talk about economic development and a competitive advantage for any region, it starts with education and training. If we do not have the quality workforce available for the employers, our employers will go to places where they can find it. Plain and simple. When we are working with companies that want to move into our market and attract them to this area, the first question, the last question, and virtually every question in between comes down to the talent base that we have here. What are the strengths of our region? What are the talent base that we have? And for us then, how do we continue to build it? You know, there's a lot of conversations around today about attracting talent to West Michigan, and that is important. We need to find ways to continue to be a draw, to be an attractive place for people to relocate. But if you really look deep at the demographics, it doesn't, those folks, it doesn't really move the needle. It's not enough people. We're never going to attract enough people to really move the demographic needle. If we're going to make an impact in our economy and make sure we have a competitive workforce going forward, we have got to develop it ourselves. From preschoolers to college graduates and lifelong learners after that, we've got to be active. So there's a few things that are going in our favor today. First, we have to recognize we're on Hope College's campus. We have to recognize they have record enrollment this year. A positive, strong, dynamic college right in our home that's growing. Up the street, Grand Valley State, record enrollments this year. Record enrollments in their engineering program in particular. It's a very strong indicator that we are going to be able to develop a good portion of the talent we need. We have 2 thriving colleges and universities here compared to some other parts of Michigan, frankly, where the enrollments have declined. There's a bit of apathy within those organizations and they're not able to provide that talent. Here we don't have that issue. We also have a number of great collaborative efforts underway between education and industry. Our sort of pre-K program, the Ready for School initiative, is a phenomenal success in just a few short years. Launched by the Community Foundation and now with support from Hope College and others, we have a Ready for School initiative that is capturing the nation's attention, getting substantial support from the Kellogg Foundation and finding ways to replicate this across the country. But ultimately, it's about how do we make sure every kid is ready for school from day one? Do we read to them every day? Do we have the coaching and counseling available for parents to make sure kids are prepared? There's all kinds of opportunities for folks in this room to volunteer and engage with that kind of effort and make a real lasting impact with our kids. Destination Education is another great program that hasn't got maybe as much attention, but certainly high impact. Folks that are counseling our high schoolers about lifelong learning, making sure they're ready for college, making sure they're ready to succeed post-high school, and making an impact there. I would also add, and there's no fancy logo to put up there, but our high schools, our public schools, and our, should just say K-12 schools, Christian schools, the charter schools, and our public schools are all taking efforts or making efforts to connect in industry and with industry in ways that I have not seen in my 8 years here. They are now recognizing clearly there needs to be a better connect between the learnings of our students and applying it to real-world applications. They're actively looking for those partnerships. So I would ask that you think of a couple things here. First, if the schools call, take that call and find a way to connect, find a way to engage. And if they don't call you, call them. No matter what industry you're in, there's something that students can learn from your operation. You know, if you're an architect, if you're in insurance, if you're a banker, if you're in real estate, if you're making self-dimming mirrors, you can teach to students. You can teach the teachers. Give them real-world applications for the kids to understand what they're learning has some applicability towards their future. We can do something really exciting there if you put some effort towards it. So if they haven't called, make the call. Find a way to get internships into your business, find a way to get co-ops, find a way to get teachers into your operations so they can see how the world is working today. Second key element of economic development strategy, and it kind of gets back to that patents per capita stat I mentioned earlier, is innovation. How do we continue to drive new thinking, new ideas into our community? Certainly we have companies that are doing this very aggressively. We also have a couple of initiatives that have launched over the last couple of years that are accelerating and helping on this front too. One is New North. Nate Young, who's on the chamber board and has presented here before, is doing some great work, he and the team, to really get some advanced training taking place. Almost, if you're in the manufacturing world, you've probably trained your team on lean manufacturing up and down and around and around. The same sort of concept, lean manufacturing principles, can now be applied towards innovation. Can we put an innovation process in place that accelerates our ability to come up with new ideas, accelerates our ability to implement those new ideas? And Nate and the team are doing some great work, and if you haven't explored it, I would encourage you to do so. They're helping companies from big to small, from Johnson Controls to JPs, to make that type of effort a really important key catalyst for the community. The second piece on the innovation front, something that we launched back in '09, is the MSU Bioeconomy Institute. Dr. Tom Garr has taken over as the research director there late last fall and has really helped being a catalyst over there. The next few months, frankly, are going to be the busiest months we've seen. There's a growing interest in green chemistry, and the folks and the industry folks are starting to really recognize that institute as a center for that activity in Michigan. So it's an exciting time there as well. Both of these efforts and many others are all driven around developing new ideas, accelerating the execution of new ideas throughout the region. Next, we're an entrepreneurial community, always have been, always will be. It's sort of in our blood, but we have to make sure we continue this effort. We can't just sit back and be thankful for the past entrepreneurs. We got to find a way to support future entrepreneurs. We operate 2 incubator programs. One is a chemistry-based, lab-based incubator at the Institute, the MSU Institute. The second is our technology-based incubator over in Zeeland, or web application. We had an iPad or an iPhone app company in the other day. Crazy stuff. I can't even begin to understand how that industry works, but people are making nice money at it. So there's great opportunities there to mentor some early stage companies. You know, what did you learn as you developed your company that you wish you knew before you started? Well, take that knowledge and apply it and transfer it over to new companies. Help them understand and see things before they have to trip and stub their toe themselves. The last one, and this is an exciting new venture, Steve Vanderveen at Hope College launched the Hope Entrepreneur Initiative. They're helping guide college students to develop their own ideas, develop their own concepts and put it into a business plan and ultimately try to make a go of it. Really cool stuff, interesting ideas as you might imagine coming from 20-year-olds. And if you want to have some fun, that's a program that is really geared towards mentorship. Get alongside of these young folks, get some energy from them, help them, guide them, and get engaged in some form of capacity and get that next wave of entrepreneur going in our community. We're doing a good deal of work at Lakeshore Advantage around economic clusters, and many of these things expand beyond our local region into the greater West Michigan region, but there's some good things taking place. Certainly our furniture industry has been a long established cluster. Getting the supply chain in place, getting the industrial design community here, getting the training capacity at Kendall and other places. Our office furniture economic cluster is very robust and has been in place for a long time. We're continuing to make sure that stays intact. If you've paid attention over the years at these early bird breakfasts and if you've attended George Erichek's programs, he talks about communities being sticky. How can you make your community sticky so that industry does not want to leave, that they in fact want to come here? This cluster development activity helps us to be sticky. If you are doing anything in the world of office furniture, chances are you've been through West Michigan at some point. You may have an office here, you may use industrial designers here, you may have a facility here because we have this high concentration. Well, we have opportunities to build that same level of stickiness, that same sort of magnetic draw around other economic clusters. Certainly, and more broadly, advanced manufacturing, the capabilities of companies like Johnson Controls and Gentex, Magna, and others are a great asset for us that we can build upon further. Our food processing cluster is really robust and something that I think falls under the radar screen too often. You know, Matt talked about wanting to lend into that sort of ag market. It is a growing and robust industry, as they like to remind me that we don't all have to buy cars, but we do have to eat, and so it makes for a nice industry. Well, we've pulled the food processing companies together over the last few years and been able to tackle some really cool issues. We discovered in talking with them together that we had a pretty significant wastewater issue, a bottleneck for growth for the community. We were able to find, by pulling these companies together, we were able to find some resources and some dollars to fund infrastructure, to the tune of about $7 million, that has alleviated that bottleneck. It's allowed companies like Request Foods and Quincy Street and Boar's Head to grow on the north side. that prior to that were really stuck. So it's been a real eye-opener that you can really learn if you pull the industry together, if you listen to what their needs are, and then just go about tackling those problems, we can have some success and really open up doors for more growth, and we've seen that. And last, and certainly something we talked about at length the last time I was here, is the Advanced Energy Storage Initiative, the battery plants that have gone in on the south end of town. Certainly it is not as fast as we had hoped. It's certainly not as fast as the companies had hoped, but it is going. I mean, the fact is we have 400 people working today in this industry that were not working there 2 years ago. We have $600 million worth of investment in the floors, on the plant floors of these facilities. We have 16 suppliers that have suddenly surrounded this industry, both existing West Michigan companies that have found a new market to pursue, and new companies that have quietly moved into town and got a foothold in our community. It's a really exciting opportunity, but it's something that we are going to have to stay the course and be patient on. On this one, I will say, to see the way the community has come together, though, has been very exciting. To see the existing companies really pursue this new market, to see our colleges, universities, and community colleges, even our high schools with the ISD, developing programs to help prepare people for this industry. We're well on our way to creating that economic cluster that we talked about 2 years ago. And lastly, economic expansions. This is sort of the bread and butter at Lakeshore Advantage. This captures the headlines. When we can work with companies that are growing, people love to see those headlines. We'll tell you in 2 weeks we're going to have a great announcement. You can't believe how desperately I wanted to be able to announce it today, but we can't. It's not our announcement to make, but a great area company employer is going to be adding a couple hundred people with a new technology. It's something we've worked on with quite some time, and it's going to be a nice boost to the community, filling a building that's been empty for a couple of years. So really exciting stuff, so watch for that. Sorry, just a little tease. But you can drive around now and see some expansion activity. You can drive around and see some steel going up in levels that we've not seen in quite some time. You know, we took a breather in 2008 and 2009. Companies then backfilled the space that they had vacated back in 2010, and now today we're starting to see steel go up again. And it's just sort of like driving past the house that hasn't sold. Driving past steel going up lifts the spirit, right? You want to see that. You want to see cranes in the air. You want to see concrete trucks going by and pouring their cement. It's an exciting time to see construction, and we're starting to see that around town. Now, this is an area where everybody here can participate as well. It is our network. It is not the folks just on our staff at Lakeshore Advantage. We have a great team, but we cannot be everywhere all the time. We rely on folks in this room and others who couldn't be here today to participate in the economic development activity. One great way is to help us identify growth projects. If you know a friend or neighbor or yourself, if you're growing, come talk with us and let's talk about how we can be of assistance. And let me just share one example of how this can work. Tim Hemingway, I suspect many of the people here know who Tim is. He's the former president at SAF Holland, and we had worked with him quite a bit when we were at Lakeshore Advantage when he was still there. But he retired and sort of walked off into the sunset a little bit. He's still very active from a volunteer perspective, but at a day-to-day he's not working. And Tim was on vacation. He travels a lot right now, and he was with a friend down south, and this friend over the course of that week started talking about what his business interests were. He mentioned that he's on a board of a private company down in Texas, and that company was thinking about someday, not anytime soon, but someday, putting a plant somewhere in the upper Midwest. Tell me about West Michigan. And Tim was prepared to say, you know, we've got a great place to live, we've got a great workforce, we've got a very strong manufacturing base, great engineering support, low unionization, great schools and education, all the strengths, great utility rates, all the reasons, you know, all the reasons why we have 30% manufacturing today are what I just listed, and it's also why a company from Texas might have an interest in moving up here. So Tim gave him the soft sell, came back and said, you know, you should really call Bob. He called us at Lakeshore and said, you should really call Bob, tell him I said hi, and see if we can get some traction here. It takes time. This was a 2-year project for the company, but today we're one of 3 final sites for this project. And I don't know, I can't sit here and tell you for certain if we're going to get this particular project in our community, but I can tell you we'd never, not in a million years, would have seen this project or had even this opportunity if Tim hadn't worked his network, had confidence and trust in the community, had confidence and trust in Lakeshore Advantage to make that referral. So I just ask, when it comes to the expansion side, think about your network. Who do you know? What conversations did you have this summer? Who might you see over the holidays? Be aware, be ready. When opportunity knocks, let's, as a community, go after it. And be confident that you can call us and we'll follow through in confidence and confidentiality. So there are plenty of ways for you to engage. There are plenty of ways for you to make a contribution, whether it's with our schools, whether it's with entrepreneurs, or whether it's with some of the sort of more marquee projects and expansion projects that we see. So let me close with these 3 key takeaways. To be clear, the economy today is absolutely robust. We all have to look past the house that's been for sale for 2 years and recognize the data today is clearly telling us we are a robust economy, the jobs are back, the housing market is coming back, electric demand is up. We have some really strong economic data driving us forward. Secondly, we have some real optimism and real reason for optimism going forward. We have an export-based economy, we have an innovation-based economy, and our companies are telling us without question that they intend to grow. We have great opportunities on the near-term horizon. But lastly, and sort of a call to action here, is this is not going to happen by chance. We have to continue to work at this. We all have to find a way to make a positive contribution and get engaged. So today, as we leave, remember the data is in our favor, the winds are behind our back, and there's a way for you to get involved and move our economy forward even faster. Thank you.
We have a couple of minutes. I thought I would take this opportunity to do a little Q&A with Randy while we have him. And I just wanted to ask you a question, Randy, as I was listening to your presentation. What pitfalls do you see out there? This was a very optimistic presentation. What pitfalls might be lying out there that could cause us to stumble here?
Oh, there's none. It's all blue sky, right? Come on. You know, I think we have to get better, much better, frankly, at aligning the education and training resources with the demands of the employers. It's easier said than done. I mean, it's you know, to get better intel, faster intel from our employers of what their needs are and being able to react in real time on the education front to meet those needs. If we could dial that in and be more precise there, I think we do a much better job. I mean, if you go to Craigslist today and just type in Holland or Zeeland and look at the job postings, you will be amazed at the number of positions that are open and going unfilled today. So if we could just tighten that connection between employers and education and make it a more dynamic, more real-time conversation, I think we could be in a much, much stronger position.
That leads right into my next question too. Are you seeing that kind of cooperation at the level that you need through education, business, government?
Yeah, it's definitely getting stronger, and I think it's tough. I mean, we're still on the heels of a downturn, and so we still all have that 2008, 2009 downturn in the back of our minds. So it's hard for us to think, boy, we are really in a tight labor market today. But if you talk with the employers, if you talk with the HR folks, if you talk with the manpowers that are here, they will all tell you the labor market is extremely tight today. So the folks that are out of the workforce today, one, we got to draw them back in, and we got to draw them back in with better skill sets. So it's a hard conversation to have because people still think the labor market is soft, they still think the economy is soft, and so we haven't fully made that transition. But I will say the conversations that have been started in the last year and a half, there was the Model Communities Initiative that really pulled some education and business leaders together that's really making some great strides. Just have to keep it moving.
Are there any particular issues on the ballot in November that you're paying close attention to? For instance, the bridge issue.
Yeah.
I had to ask that one.
So I will say that Lakeshore Advantage, we don't take political positions. That hasn't been our nature. The Chamber has a very strong approach in terms of taking policy positions, but there's no doubt, if you look at, I think there's 4 key ballot initiatives, most of them, if not all of them, are pretty dramatically, I would argue, anti-economy, anti-growth. And I think as a state, we really have to, I would, just as a citizen, not as Lakeshore Advantage, suggest, I don't know that passing constitutional changes or amendments this fashion is the right way to do it just from a governance standpoint. And then if you dig in deeply to what they're trying to do, boy, it doesn't seem like they're pro-growth policies at a time that Michigan still needs to be a pro-growth oriented state.
No, that's a good perspective to have. You mentioned that there was an area employer that might be adding a couple hundred jobs. You know, I really could use a news tip going into this afternoon. Just between us, huh? Randy Thelen.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, don't disappear too fast, Randy. I'm a